July 25, 1943. You do not question the stability of allies. For decades, Japan's Imperial General Staff assumed the Axis powers were unbreakable. Germany, Italy, and Japan, three pillars of a global coalition, stood as a fortress against the Allied world. The rule was simple. Coordination was trust. Trust was reliability, and reliability was assumed absolute. Italy, in particular, was considered a dependable secondary front. The Italian Navy, though smaller than the Royal Navy, could tie down British forces in the Mediterranean, keeping convoys off balance and buying Japan time to consolidate its ambitions in Southeast Asia. That was the assumption. It was a rule etched into every map, every dispatch, every strategic calculation. But in July 1943, one man's fall shattered that certainty. Benito Mussolini, the Duce, the axis upon which Italian fascism spun, was deposed, arrested, removed from power. Overnight, the rule that Japan's allies were immutable disintegrated. Vice Admiral Shigeyoshi Inoue is 55 years old, a career officer from Hiroshima with silvered hair and eyes that have seen the rise of a modern navy. He carries the weight of every engagement his fleets have fought, every calculation he has made, every expectation of victory that has turned to smoke. His reputation is built on meticulous planning and unsparing honesty, qualities rare in a hierarchical command. It is July 25, 1943. Japan is heavily invested in the Pacific, with Guadalcanal still smoldering in memory, and Midway a specter of lost opportunity. Europe, distant and abstract, has always seemed a theater of secondary concern. But Mussolini's fall changes that. For Japan, Italy's collapse is not just a political shock, it is a potential strategic nightmare. Inoue reads the intelligence dispatches. The news is terse. Mussolini deposed, King Victor Emmanuel III in control, Italian forces wavering. The Mediterranean, once a buffer against British dominance, could collapse. Supply lines previously coordinated with Berlin and Rome may now be disrupted. Inoue leans back, his fingers trace the edge of a dispatch map. How do you maintain an alliance when one pillar falls? How do you prepare when an entire front could dissolve overnight? He faces the impossible challenge: respond without panic, reorganize without delay, and anticipate moves that even seasoned German planners might not foresee. Inoue calls his staff. The room hums with the nervous energy of officers who understand the gravity of July 25th. He orders a full review of Japanese-Italian communication lines. Radios buzz, teletypes click. Every Italian naval base in the Mediterranean is monitored. The first reports trickle in. Ships in Naples have gone dark. The Tirrenia convoy has been intercepted by Italian partisans. Rome itself is tense. Italian officers are unsure whether to obey royal orders or remain loyal to Mussolini's remnants. Inoue's mind races. The Mediterranean, previously predictable, is now a theater of chaos. He calculates 1,500 yards, distance from Sicily to the nearest Axis reinforcement. British patrols could cut them off in hours. 1,200 yards, time before supply chains fail. 900 yards, the point at which Italian cooperation is no longer assured. He orders Japanese vessels in the Indian Ocean to hold position. Any diversion toward the Mediterranean could be disastrous. Resources are already stretched. The Japanese High Command in Tokyo, thousands of miles away, relies entirely on his assessment. A report comes in.
The Italian fleet is uncertain, some units refusing orders, others awaiting the king's directives. Inoue fires off coded messages to Berlin, outlining contingencies for a fractured Axis, emphasizing the potential need for Japan to act independently in supply chains and fleet deployment. The sound of typewriters fills the command room. Every keystroke is a small act of defiance against chaos. Inoue calculates again. A 3,000-ton freighter laden with munitions, critical for the North African front, could be stranded within 48 hours if Italian ports fail. He must decide. Reroute it through Singapore and the Suez bypass, or risk sending it into a Mediterranean now dominated by uncertainty. Hours pass. The tension thickens. The officers around him begin whispering of disaster. What if the British exploit this? What if Rome declares an armistice? Inoue does not flinch. He writes new directives, emphasizing flexibility, preemptive withdrawal, and reconnaissance. By late afternoon, the first British intelligence intercepts arrive, confirming fears. Italian forces are negotiating separately. British command anticipates a collapse, and Axis coordination has broken. Inoue breathes. The impossible action is underway. Not a battle of ships and guns, but of decisions, calculations, and preemptive maneuvers. If you find this kind of untold history as fascinating as we do, we'd be honored if you'd hit that subscribe button. We believe these stories of courage, sacrifice, and strategic genius deserve to be told, and by subscribing, you help us ensure they aren't forgotten.
Inoue's mind races further. He calculates 72-hour windows for intelligence collection, 48-hour windows for supply rerouting, and 24-hour windows for direct fleet deployment. Each calculation is a thread in a tapestry designed to hold the Axis together, even as Italy itself unravels. By nightfall, Inoue drafts a personal report to Emperor Hirohito. The Mediterranean is no longer reliable. Axis coordination is fractured. Japanese fleets must act independently if Europe collapses entirely. The report is meticulous, numbers precise. 12 supply ships at risk, 3 cruiser divisions on standby, 2 destroyer flotillas ready for rapid deployment, 1 critical window of 36 hours to prevent strategic disaster. The following days confirm the stakes. Italian ports shut, convoys delayed, German liaison officers scrambling. Yet, because of Inoue's decisions, critical supply lines remain intact. The Mediterranean does not collapse entirely, but the lesson is clear. Allies can fall, rules can be broken, and survival depends on preparation and decisive action. What they didn't know was how much Mussolini's fall would reshape Japanese strategic thinking. Inoue's preemptive measures allowed Japan to maintain critical supply chains in Southeast Asia, preventing a cascade of shortages that could have crippled operations from Burma to the Dutch East Indies. German command is shocked. They had assumed Italy's collapse would trigger an immediate Italian surrender, freeing British forces for a Mediterranean push. Instead, Japanese decisions slow the domino effect. The Axis survives in a fragile equilibrium longer than expected. Inoue's reports influence future Japanese contingency planning. The idea of an unreliable ally becomes a permanent feature of doctrine. Subsequent operations, from convoy planning to fleet deployment, now account for political upheaval in distant theaters. Mussolini's removal, a seemingly isolated European event, reverberates through the Pacific, forcing Japan to adapt in ways no manual could anticipate. Shigeyoshi Inoue survives the war, retiring in 1945, decades before the full implications of Mussolini's fall are understood. His diaries, letters, and reports remain a rare window into the moment when Japan's perception of the Axis was irrevocably altered. To this day, military historians cite his decisions as the epitome of foxhole-level foresight, where human judgment stands between order and chaos. His actions preserved critical operations and demonstrated that even distant upheavals demand immediate response.